All right, all right. Good evening, everybody. I am happy to be here tonight. My name is Tyler Johnson, and if you are here to hear a little bit about 8 moves that I think that people in their 20s, 30s, and really 40s should be making in order to build a really good wealth foundation. We're going to start with a little bit of housekeeping. So, first and foremost, your videos and microphones will not be on for this recording. If you need to engage or have questions, you can either use the question and answer box at the top for anything that is content related, and then I'll have you use the chat at the end of this webinar for any suggestions about future topics or feedback and things of the sort. The other thing to note is that we are recording this. We have several folks that are wanting this distributed after the fact and watching this on different channels, and I will turn off the recording before we get to the Q&A time. But really excited to engage with the conversation. We're probably going to be small but mighty tonight. This is the first one of these webinars, but believing in build it and they will come. So starting with a foundation and then getting into specific content in the future. And so with that, let me go ahead and just introduce myself and give you a little bit of background. So I am Tyler Johnson. I'm the owner of StillWater Financial Advisors, and really started this company in the later parts of last year. I was with Vanguard for 12 years, an advisor there for about 8 of those 12 years, and really started the company just to be in the community. I wanted to serve people in a very personal way. Vanguard serves people all over the country, and I had never met a client in person. So just really wanted to be in depth in my community and go a little bit deeper than what I was able to do at Vanguard. I'm a certified financial planner. I always give fiduciary advice to my clients, which means I act in their best interest always. My wife, Kelly, is in the picture there. It's a little outdated because we now have our son, Levi, who was born on March 3rd. And so very thankful to be on that journey. And so, as you can probably infer, I'm in my mid 30s. And so, reaching the population of 20s, 30s, and 40s is something that's really near and dear to my heart because it's what our family is walking through currently. So where are we located? We're located in the Steel Creek area of Charlotte. There is no current branch office as of today because since COVID, so many people like to meet online or like to meet more flexibly. So we meet virtually on Microsoft Teams, can also meet people in person out in the community or even in their home. And we're really focused on serving and supporting the needs of individuals and families in the first half of their adult lives. We're still equipped to support individuals that are in later stages in pre-retirement or even retirement years, especially when they are the parents or family members of our core clients, which is that young professional population in the first half of their careers. Really hoping to build a multi-generational business where it's built around trust and personal relationships to make wealth transitions and conversations easier for the entire family because family is multi-generational and money is really the gasoline that makes the car go in society, and so we want to be a safe place for all generations. So what do? We offer customizable services or a suite of services to someone depending on their needs and their stage of life. So that can include investment management, but we also love having conversations around goal planning, insurance services, estate planning, tax strategies, college planning, charitable giving, and more. We have software even available that we plug in our younger savers to that don't really have a lot to their name yet, but just want to have a roadmap for the future. We engage them with some more arm's length support and really user friendly software where they can kind of build that solid foundation. So enough of that background. Anyone that's watching this recording or that is here to talk about 8 key moves that someone in this first half of their adult life should really be focused on and thinking about. And so let's go ahead and dive into that. So before we get into the 8 that I have laid out for this webinar, first thing I'll say is that this particular webinar is more about the what and not the how. You can go very deep and very broad when you get into the how, because every single person's situation and needs and stage of life, they're all different. So it'd be really hard to deliver a relevant webinar reaching this whole population group if we were just focused on the how. So let's start and build a steady foundation around the what. What are things that we can and should be doing? And then we can continue the conversation into the how at a later date. And so where do we start to build that solid foundation? Just like a house, you wouldn't build a house without having a foundation, or if you did, nothing else that you build onto it would matter. And so let's think about this with the end in mind. We always want to start, always want to work with the end in mind. It's really hard to get somewhere if you don't actually know where your destination is. So we want to first take the time and reflection to assess what are our goals. What do we actually want out of life? What is important? What imprint do we want to leave behind? It's very easy if you just wake up to just go with the flow of the day. We've all been there. The day starts before we're even awake. Emails start coming in, but that going with the flow very rarely takes you where you want to go as an end destination. The other thing that we want to think about and understand is the effects of compounding. So compounding is essentially when something builds on itself and gains momentum over time. The longer that you give something to build momentum patiently, the more of a force that thing becomes later in life. And this effect can work both for or against you. You can compound both good or bad habits. If I start getting in the habit, which when my wife watches this, I think she's online, if I eat dessert every night and that becomes my habit, that is taking me down a bad path that is going to lead to poorer health in the future. So that's a habit that might need to be changed, but you can compound good habits as well. And that's where we really want to focus. Negative compounding in the financial world can often be thought of as bad debt, where you owe and your balance keeps growing and growing. And if you don't take care of it, you end up in a place where you can't get out of the hole. Good compounding is often savings. And so interest earned on investments or CDs or a variety of real estate. There's a lot of things where when you're the owner earning the interest or the results, it's good compounding. As mentioned, time is a key asset. In fact, in investments, I always like to say that time in the market is going to do far more for you than timing the market. So we really want to make sure we start early and intentionally to get the time on our side. If you think about risk in your life, so future uncertainties, there are things that are outside of our control, but we can protect against some of those things by thinking about and planning ahead. It's going to save you a lot of stress and heartache to reflect, hey, where am I exposed? Where am I vulnerable? What needs to be in place to protect myself and my family should this thing happen or that thing happen? Could be job loss, could be a disability, could be a major family need or health event that pulls you away and requires you to do caretaking. Could be loss of your own life or someone in your family. And we really want to use insurance and other means to make sure that we're not leaving ourselves exposed. If you think of military strategy, you think of the Spartans and the story of the 300. They were so strong and so fearsome because they were impenetrable. Everybody had their flank covered, and there was no way to really break through. There was no point of weakness. And covering yourself and your risks is a way of ensuring that your flank is not exposed and that you have a strong financial position. And lastly, and this is super important for my generation, I'm in my mid 30s, so the 20s, 30s, and 40s, we don't have patience. we want immediate gratification. Amazon delivers things in like same day now, and so we've just been programmed to want things immediately. But when you're thinking about wealth building, that is going to get you in trouble more often than not. You don't want to get swept away by the tides of the next hot thing. That can set you back years in terms of your stable wealth building. And it's also important to note that, finding more money will not by itself fix bad money habits. There's a statistic out there that says something like 40% of households making over 100,000 are known to be living paycheck to paycheck. And that's because as they make more money, they spend more money, and getting more money does not fix bad habits. So we want to be steady and patient around some of these things so that we can see the most fruit over the course of our life. I use it all the time with clients, the story of the tortoise and the hare, meaning that, hey, don't think about who is ahead at the beginning of the race. What really matters is who's ahead by the end of the race. All right, so I've spent a few minutes talking and leading into it, so let's get into the real meat, which is the 8 things that I want to present today as strategies and ways to really build this solid wealth foundation. And so first thing is going to be paying off debt that has an interest rate of greater than 6%, which is a lot of debt in today's world. The first bullet point there, taking the guaranteed return, what does that mean? Well, if I have cash sitting in my bank account, that cash in a checking account not paying me anything, in a savings account might in today's world be paying you 5%. And if rates drop, that'll come down as well. Credit card debt is often at 22 to 27% interest. A lot of home loans now are at 7 or 8% interest. Personal loans and other types of loans student loans can be 8, 10, 12% interest. And so by taking your cash and putting it towards debt rather than investing it, you are getting a guaranteed return in the form of the interest that you are not going to have to pay. It is a surefire, stable, steady bet. Whereas if you put that in the markets or even in a savings account, you're betting on the future of rates and the movement of the investments, and it's much more uncertain. Now, you can play that game when the debt is lower, but if it's over 6%, it makes a lot of sense looking at history to take the guaranteed return. If you are interacting with and keeping debt, then you really want to think about the outperformance potential of the thing that you bought with the debt. So if I buy a home and I expect it to go down in value, which doesn't happen often but did in 2008, that's a bad form of debt because I'm going to be paying on the debt but losing value in what I bought with the debt. Now, if you have, like, I'm fortunate enough to have a 2.75% mortgage interest when I refinanced back in the really low rate times a few years ago, I can probably feel pretty good about putting that money I have towards other things and earning more than 2.75% interest. And so you're constantly, in terms of debt payoff versus keeping your debt, you're weighing this, hey, can I put this somewhere else, use it elsewhere to get outperformance on the thing that I'm going to buy? So things like cars and other stuff, they have a depreciating value, so you really have to make sure that you value the utility of the thing in a case where you're not going to get growth. Don't take the future for granted either. A lot of people say, well, I'm going to live fast and furious now, and I'm going to have a better paying job in 10 years and be able to pay off this debt. That is a risky bet. You aren't guaranteed that that will happen. And so, I think, protecting yourself earlier on by avoiding overusing debt carries a lot of wisdom with it. Financial strain and pressures is another reason to do this, to pay off this higher interest debt greater than 6%. The stress of money is still one of the leading causes of family strife and divorce. It's easy to say it'll never happen to you, but it is happening to more and more families and marriages. And that can change very quickly. Things can be flipped upside down, before you really know it. So, thinking of where that strain comes from, a lot of times that financial strain that is on a household comes from the weight of having to maintain and service and live with a lot of debt. And so I think that's a good case for this first point of paying it off. And lastly, on this point, thinking of it and getting out of debt early being an opportunity for seeing the chessboard of life more clearly and being able to redeploy debt. You'll hear me call it leverage, because that's really what it is. It's not having to put your own money in and still being able to get something of value or do something of value. And when you're already under debt, you have limited options to deploy strategically other types of debt. You're just kind of treading water and trying to keep your head above water. But if you're more debt free, you can see all of your options more clearly and better deploy those. So it could be things like a home purchase, an investment property, the confidence to start your own business, or even for more community-based individuals, charitable giving to causes or religious organizations, or venture capital type of funding where you support other people's businesses as they get started. It's hard to do that when you're under your own debt. Oh, skipped one here. Let me get back to number 2. Okay. And so number 2, this idea, and this may be lesser known than the idea of, hey, Tyler, it's good to pay off debt. Yeah, I get it. Or excuse me, this one is employer matching. So this one's probably more known than most of, hey, make sure you take full advantage of your employer match. And so, on the surface, that may seem like a no-brainer, but enough people don't fully do it or understand it that I had to throw it into this conversation. And so I think that this actually comes ahead of just about every type of debt payoff, because especially with your employer plan where they might match you 100% up to 5% or some version of that, nowhere else in life can you essentially get an immediate 100% return on your money. And so your matching does go beyond what is in your employer plan. So some employers, if you are under a high deductible health plan, which we're going to talk about here in just a moment as a strategy, then you have access to an HSA. And if you use that plan type and save to that plan type, some employers will match that. You don't want to miss out on the opportunity to take advantage of that. And then there are also other benefits that employers might offer that you want to take full advantage of. Volunteer time off, which is the VTO. That is an opportunity to get out and make your personal connections in the community, which could serve you better later on and allow you to feel more tied into your community. Some employers match charitable giving. This can set up relationships and access to organizations that create opportunities for you later on. There can be a number of benefits that your employer is offering you, and you want to make sure that you have a chance to take full advantage of all of those benefits. A sidebar when it comes to employer savings is there's a lot of times a Roth option and a pre-tax option. Your match benefit from your employer is almost always pre-tax because the employer takes a tax deduction for what they put in. But you as the employee will have options to save either pre-tax or to a Roth IRA. This is really a strategy around current versus future tax rates. If you are young and in the early stages of your savings journey, then putting into a Roth might make sense. You won't get a tax deduction for what you put in, but then every dollar of that money grows tax-free for the future for you to use if you end up being in a higher tax rate. If you are at a higher peak of earnings right now, like let's say both spouses are working and one spouse is going to stop working and take care of the kids, then it probably makes more sense to take the tax deduction with the pre-tax money now, and you can always move that money over to a Roth strategically at a future year and lock in a lower tax rate. So when you're thinking Roth versus pre-tax, you're really thinking about, hey, do I need the tax break now, or am I okay giving up the tax break now in order to get the tax-free growth on this money going forward? And so next point that I want to bring up is your high deductible health plans and your health savings account, which is often called an HSA. This is predominantly for people of average or good health, but if known about and used correctly, this can be probably the second best savings vehicle out there other than getting your employer match. And so what is a high deductible health plan? It is a health plan if you have single individual coverage that has a deductible of at least $1,600. It could be higher. Your deductible is what you have to pay before insurance starts kicking in. If you're under a family plan that supports more than just you, your minimum deductible is $3,200 for family coverage to be considered a high deductible health plan. There are also some requirements on out-of-pocket maximums or amounts for family and individual. Easiest way to know if you have a high deductible health plan that is HSA eligible is to call the insurance provider that you're currently using for your benefits and just ask them, hey, is my plan a high deductible health plan? Can I use an HSA? Good sign if you are given an access to an HRA or FSA, so a health reimbursement account or a flexible spending account, probably a good sign you don't have a high deductible health plan because those are not available for the higher deductible plans. So, what is an HSA? Now that we've talked about a high deductible health plan, an HSA is a type of account that allows you to accumulate money for both current or future health expenses. You can use it right away if you need it, or you can save your balance for use in future years. You get a current tax reduction on the money that you put into an HSA. So if I put in $2,000 into my HSA, that takes $2,000 off of my taxable income for the year. But then simultaneously, while it's in the HSA, if I invest that money, it grows tax-free. So it's like a health Roth IRA, but unlike a Roth IRA, you also got a tax deduction on the front end. Now, a lot of people might be aware that they can use an HSA, but it's money in, money out. And sometimes that's unavoidable if they don't have enough cash on hand and they have medical expenses. But that is only half of the benefit. For those that can be planful, you put into your HSA, you invest it in stock like investments early on and get that stock like growth in the account. And then by the time you retire, you have this huge pile of money that you can use for reimbursing health expenses. And in fact, you can actually reimburse yourself for past health expenses that you have receipts for and that you didn't take a prior deduction for. So like my wife got laser eye surgery, LASIK, a couple years back. We paid for that out of pocket, saved the receipts, and now I can reimburse myself for that anytime into the future and take a tax-free withdrawal from my HSA whenever I'm ready. So it's a nice tool to use for leverage. Who is and isn't a good fit, because just because you can have a high deductible health plan doesn't mean that it is the right fit for you. And so healthier individuals and families tend to be the better fits, because remember, by definition, high deductible health plans, you're going to have to put more into it of your own money before you start getting coverage. And then most of the time they have a higher out-of-pocket maximum before insurance takes over all of the payments. So if you are racking up a ton of medical bills, the benefit of the HSA could be eroded by the higher cost of your health care that you would not have had if you had a more favorable plan. Sometimes your company might do those matching contributions into your HSA, which does soften the blow, because that's free money that you can consider as going towards your deductible for the year. So certainly a good thing to know if you have a company that is willing to partner with you and help you build up your HSA. Last point here on number 3 is just the rules and limits. So you can only, as an individual, you can only put in up to $4,150 into an HSA per year. In 2024, that does tend to go up periodically with inflation rates. As a family, if your plan covers more than one individual, $8,300 is your maximum. So because of those limits, it would take time to get that built up to where it's a really high-powered vehicle for you, which comes back to starting earlier is better. The law does give you a catch-up provision. And so if you are over the age of 55, they let you put more into an HSA on top of the basic contributions to help you catch up and gain more ground if you're starting late. All right, so point number 4 and is around life insurance. And so this comes back to filling the gaps that you identify by having good reflective time on, hey, where am I and my family at risk? The biggest thing I can tell you here is that it will never be as cheap as when you are young. If you are younger and healthier, you're not likely to get more young and you're not likely to get more healthy, unfortunately. There can be some exceptions, but generally our health diminishes as we age. And so if you wait for major inflection points in life, like a higher level of income, having your first child, second child, third child, you are basically adding costs to your insurance coverage that you could have locked in earlier at a more affordable rate. So that comes into thinking of those future needs and not just your present ones. So a family that is hopeful for kids but might still be 2, 3, 4 years away, go ahead and lock in your lower health insurance rate or life insurance rates. Now, you can always drop the coverage or reduce the coverage later, but if you're getting a 20, 30-year policy, you're really going to be happy that you got it a few years ahead of time when it was cheaper, knowing that you can always play with the coverage and drop it or reduce it later on. So don't wait. Get coverage for the life you envision or expect to have and adjust accordingly as life goes on. We're not going to have time for this today, but there is a mathematical process to determine how much life insurance you need. And it's driven by your situation, your circumstances, your family, your preferences on paying for certain things, paying off certain things. So if you need to go into detail about, hey, I want to make sure I have the exact right amount of coverage for me, you can reach out after this webinar or talk to me anytime and we'll go through that process. There wouldn't be any charge to that. It's just simply free information so that you can be well served. But like there are two main types of life insurance coverage that you really need to know. That is term coverage and cash value coverage. So term coverage is often called pure insurance. It's for a set term. So 20 years, 25 years, 30 years, your amount that you pay monthly or annually is set for that full term. And then if you are not dead, if you have not died by the end of that term, oh well, your coverage goes away. You can renew it into more expensive insurance at that time if you feel like you still need coverage, but for the most part it goes away. And so you think of that as temporary insurance. I need to fill a gap for a very specific period of time, and then I won't need the coverage anymore later in life. It is much cheaper than cash value insurance, and so it is a very common tool for younger people that have a plan with their money because they can take the difference of what the cash value would have cost them and the term and coverage, invest it, and end up well off with money that they actually get to keep versus losing the insurance benefits over time. There are different types of cash value insurance. Again, that is mostly beyond today's topic. There is whole life insurance, which just offers you a fixed rate on your cash value. There is variable life where you can treat it like an investment account. And then there's universal life, which allows for flexibility within the terms and the payments along the journey. Don't buy into something until you understand what the other types are and why you're being positioned, what you're being positioned, because there are a lot of nuances to it, and there's some ways that cash value insurance can make sense. We're going to talk about one here next. But a lot of times it's oversold and ends up costing people more. So I would definitely start thinking about term insurance first, and then you could decide if cash value insurance has a role to play in your strategy. Especially for 20s, 30s, and 40s, a big buzzword right now in that demographic, other than passive income through investment real estate, is infinite banking. You start to hear this positioned as a strategy that used to just be for the ultra high net worth. And now it's being more broadly known and understood for individuals, across any wealth spectrum. And so what does this mean? This is where you use cash value life insurance. You pay into it, you build up your cash value, because part of your payment in cash value insurance goes to your own cash value. Part of it goes to the cost of the insurance. And when you have a cash value policy, whatever you build in cash value after a certain point, you can borrow from that and use it without taxes. And so that is, you're kind of maybe seeing the idea of the infinite banking strategy start to take shape, is eventually you get enough cash value built up and you can borrow from your own life insurance policy without having to go and get the bank's approval or pay interest to another entity. When you borrow from a cash value policy, you don't have to pay taxes on that because it's a loan, not a distribution to you. So it's a tax-free withdrawal from your life insurance. And you get to use that, make use of that. It does have an interest rate on it. But if or when you're ready to pay that back, you're paying back your own death benefit policy. You're paying back into your own cash value. And so it is essentially like paying yourself back which becomes the idea of the infinite bank. Now, you have to have time to build this up. Cash value is a slow build up. You have to have 10 to 15 years before you can really start to use and leverage your cash value. And so it does take a little bit of foresight to put money in and use this as a strategy where you might be able to take money out and pay for a down payment on a house or invest in a business and not pay interest to the bank. In fact, you never have to pay that loan back. If you don't pay it back, it just reduces your death benefit on your life insurance policy, which would have been free to your heirs anyway, free of taxes. And so, very interesting strategy in that regard. And then the last thing on life insurance, there we go. So the tax rules with it, I already kind of hit on one of these, but the death benefit on your policy is tax-free to your heirs. So if you get a $100,000 policy, you pass away, your heirs get $100,000 tax-free. Loans are also tax-free, but remember, have that interest rate on them, and you still have to have enough in your policy to pay for the insurance that you're covered by. If you lose enough cash value where it can't pay for the insurance, your policy could lapse, and then you end up not having a death benefit to go to heirs. Withdrawals, which are different from loans, this is saying, hey, I'm taking the money out without the intention of paying it back, are also possible from your cash value. That usually is taxed on a first in, first out basis, which means the first money to come out is the money that you put in. So it is not taxed to you when it comes out. However, eventually, if you have earnings on your cash value and you've depleted all the money you've put into the policy, now you're paying income taxes on anything that you have made in the policy as a withdrawal. So you have to do this cautiously because remember, if you get the death benefit at your passing, it's tax-free. If you borrow from the policy, it's tax-free. So you want to be careful about withdrawing permanently from a cash value life policy. So a lot there. Remember, this is the what, not the how. So I'm going to send this out after today's webinar and get you the information to chew on. If you have follow-up questions about practical application, certainly let me know. That's a part of my career and what I'm passionate about. I'm here to help. So next point on the journey, number 5 of 8, develop a habit of budgeting. Again, may on the surface seem common sense, but a ridiculous amount of people do not do this or do not do this with intentionality. So let's start with how do we define it? What is a habit of budgeting? Budgeting is a system that you put into place to help you forecast your future income and expenses and ensure that all of your available dollars will go to the things that create the most fulfillment in your life and the most progress towards your goals. And so think of it, a lot of people, especially the spenders out there, because there's 2 types, there's savers and spenders. The spenders out there think of it as a restriction tool. Why are you worried about what I'm spending? Why are you telling me what I can and can't spend? They have this negative glass half empty mentality around budgeting, when really, with a slight perspective shift, it's actually an empowerment tool. It allows you to plan for guilt-free spending once you know that you have the most important things that you want covered already with other dollars. And so want to go on that trip or buy that video game or buy that pair of shoes. If it's in the budget, that is no guilt. You don't have to hide it from your spouse. I've heard plenty of stories of that. Like, hey, I had a bad day. I went out and bought these things, and then I had to find out where to hide it so my spouse didn't see. It avoids all of that, and again, lowers the money stress in the household because the couple is unified and empowered to spend this money accordingly. And so number 3 there that already popped up is zero sum budgeting is important for maximum success. All that means is that every dollar of income should have a home. It doesn't have to mean that it was spent, but every dollar of income needs to have an assigned home every month. So you can put it to savings, you can put it to giving charitably, you can put it to this or that, obviously prioritizing what's most important, but give it a home every month. Another interesting way to think about budgeting is starting to think of your expenses in life as how many hours of work it took to afford that thing that you are thinking about spending money on. You might be surprised how this changes your money mentality, which is important. You have to be bought into this. If you start working out and your heart's not in it, you're eventually going to give up, like the New Year's resolutioners. And I'm in that camp. So you really have to have your heart bought into it. And, one way of changing your mindset is to think about, hey, how hard did I have to work to be able to do this thing I'm getting ready to spend money on? So if you make $20 an hour, a new TV could mean 100 hours of work to pay for that TV. A vacation could mean 375 hours of work. So thinking of it like this says, hey, is it worth the amount of work I'm going to have to put in order to have this thing and the benefits that come with it? Next thing I would recommend highly is pay yourself first when it comes to budgeting. What does that mean? It means do your saving and your giving off of the top at the beginning of each month from when you have money come in. If you wait and say, well, whatever's left, I'm going to give and be generous, or I'm going to save, if I can and I haven't eaten out too much this month. If you do that, it will almost always mean that you don't save anything, don't give anything by the end of the month. If it's important to you, put it at the top and then live off the rest. A common philosophy there is the 80-20 principle. If you can save and give 20% and live off the 80% and do that continually as your income grows, you will put yourself in a pretty prosperous financial position down the road. And the last couple of points here is you're going to need to find a way to make this sustainable. If it's not, it really doesn't do you that much good. So, there's apps and tools that help with that, and I would recommend those unless you just have a love and an affinity for Microsoft Excel, or you still do things on paper and you love reconciling your checkbook every month. Power to you, but most people don't love budgeting in Excel that much that they can do that on their own and stick with it. And so the most common one that I'm aware of is YNAB. You Need a Budget is the acronym. It's a paid service, but the technology is really impressive and intuitive. There's another one called Every Dollar. There's some free ones like Rocket Money, Personal Capital. I think Mint maybe is less relevant now, but used to be one. There's a lot of ways you can go out there and find different tools. Find one that resonates with your style, and then let that system get programmed to understand your spending habits. Link your accounts to that system if it's secure, and then you will find that after you adjust it for 6 months or so, your budget is mostly hands off and you're just doing more tweaking and maintenance rather than having to do grind out the data entry. And this again is very important for sustainability. A consistent budget is the GPS on your wealth journey. If you do not have, you go on a trip, you can know your destination at the beginning and say, hey, I'm going to San Diego, California. But if you hit the road, you know your destination, but if you don't have a GPS, you're probably not taking the most efficient route to San Diego, California, unless you already live there. So you need a GPS to get where you want to go. Your budget is your consistent GPS that's helping you stay on track. So that is why it's important and in this top 8 list that I wanted to deliver today. Next thing on the journey here, and some of these are more high level and less specific, but seek to always own assets over renting. In fact, I would say only rent things when you are trying to make wise and informed long-term decisions, or you have a shorter time horizon for the need. And so that goes for vehicles, that goes for your living arrangement. So, and it goes for other property and things as well. Like rent a boat instead of own if you're only going to go on the water 2 times a year. That's going to be the smarter move. Don't buy a boat as a depreciating investment if you're not going to use it regularly. Rent a car for a little while and so that you can figure out what car you want long term so you can rent or lease. You can also do that, lease a car if you're going to move overseas in 2 years, because buying a vehicle, especially a new one, is not going to give you enough time to probably make your money back on that purchase. So renting has a place, but it should not be your default mechanism in life. And that leads to the next point, which is owners often build their wealth over time from the paychecks of renters. Like that is almost a tried and true thing, is that the owners become wealthy off of the paychecks of renters. And so your goal, as quick and reasonably as it makes sense, is to become an owner and to think of yourself as an owner rather than just going with the flow and renting things for that more immediate gratification. You can set up yourself for leverage to use situationally to become an owner, which again leverages debt. So you can use debt to become an owner more quickly, as long as you don't put yourself underwater and get ahead of yourself in your ability to maintain and serve the debt with a vision. You don't want to buy something that depreciates in value like a boat off of a credit card and then carry interest on the credit card, because that goes back to an earlier point on the debt balances. You now are paying interest on the debt and your value of your investment is decreasing and not increasing. But I would say done wisely, point number 5 feeds into this point number 6, because you can plan your budget around your future hopes and dreams of ownership. Point number 7, as we get close to the top of the hour, is invest your energy and your resources with an eye on the future. This is a little more qualitative and less quantitative, but you will get ahead of your peers in life by being intentional with your time. You want to think about where you're spending it, who you're around, what are you doing with your time? Our time is our most precious resource. It's the only thing you really can't get more of. All of us have a limited and finite amount of time. And so think of it as that valuable asset. Where and how am I spending my time? Am I spending my time in a way that's moving me towards my life goals? Or is it moving me away from my life goals? So if you're going out to the bar 5 times a week and getting drunk, then, unless you're planning on being an alcohol taste tester or owning a bar at some point, that is probably not a productive use of your consistent time. What are you learning? Like, hey, what are you pushing yourself to learn? Are you scrolling on social media and reading the gossip articles of the times, or are you intentionally putting information in front of yourself to learn skills and acquire information that's pushing you towards where you want to go? That is an important thing as well. Comes back to usage of time. Who are you surrounding yourself with is important as well. Again, all of this comes back to time, but like, hey, who is in your circle? I'm going to have this point in a minute, but it's you show me your circle, I'll show you your future. And so we really want to think about, hey, am I putting myself around the people and the things that are elevating me rather than pulling me down? And this is an especially hard concept to get when you're in your 20s and even 30s, because you want to be around, we're like the dog, right? Like the next shiny thing, we're like, ooh, ball, ball. And so we go towards the things that are fun, social, but a lot of times that can be like spinning your hamster wheel. It's not actually moving you towards your goal and challenging the way you see and think about the world. How are you building and equipping yourself? Who do you want to be in 3, 5, or 10 years? What advice would you give to someone who is on that journey? Like if you could remove yourself from the situation, what would you tell someone else to be doing to get them where they want to go? And then follow your own advice because that is ultimately where you want to be able to go. Also, what should you avoid? What is standing in the way of your building and equipping? What things can you remove from your equation to enhance your progress toward where you want to be? And then this is important too, have fun, but have fun with a purpose when possible. This is a big one for my 20s and 30s that don't have the kids and maybe aren't married yet. Life should not be all serious. You don't know that your health and that your life is guaranteed. You don't want to miss out on opportunities to live and experience things in life. But when possible, go back and have fun with a purpose. What does that mean, Tyler? Well, think about traveling to destinations to learn about cultures and international business or the way things get done in different places in the world. Seek out mentors or role models that have similar hobbies as you do, and then connect and learn while having fun over that hobby or thing that you enjoy. Again, live life fully, but blend your fun with intentionality of pulling you towards where you ultimately want to be. And that doesn't just apply for your 20s, 30s, and 40s. There's really opportunities to assess that in every stage of our lives. Oh, excuse me. Last point for today, build a trusted support team to scale your impact. So it comes back to that point that I shared previously. Show me your friends or your circle, and I'll show you your future. The first thing that a coach thinks about when they're getting ready to for the season is how do I find my best available players that need to be in each position? The coach knows that he or she cannot go out there and win a game without the right players on the field. You have a bunch of football players in a ballet competition, probably not going to be very competitive, even with the best ballet coach mind behind the scenes. Vice versa, you take a bunch of ballerinas out to the football field, put pads on them. It doesn't really matter how good your game plan is, you're gonna get, you're gonna lose. So you can't do everything yourself. Know your own limits. Be the dumbest person in the room when possible, which means surround yourself with those influential people that you want to be like, kind of like the networking version of dress for the role that you want to be in, not the role that you find yourself in currently. And then bring in and ask for help, bring in your team to make sure that you can scale and grow as quickly as possible. You also want to be a connected connector in life. And so, make yourself indispensable to others by not just what you know, but who you also bring to the table. It is very true that that who you know is sometimes more important than what you know. And so by making yourself a connected connector, you give yourself leverage in life and make yourself more indispensable. So who is needed to be on my team? What expertise might be needed, and where do I have it? Where do I need to find it? Well, somebody to manage your finances and to help you think about strategy, how to leverage tax moves and to get the most out of your money. Most people think they can do it on their own, but then end up significantly worse off than if they had brought a trusted person in to help. Same thing goes with tax strategy, especially for business owners. You're probably not able to set up your own estate plan. You need a trained legal professional or service to do that. Might need at times a life coach, a business coach to help you stay focused. Need insurance professionals to help you get the right products from reliable carriers. personal admin assistant to help you organize and to take away clerical tasks off of your to-do list, and so many other things. You could add in roofers, mechanics, so many skills that if you don't possess it and can't do it at a high level, find someone that you can put on your team that will be there for a long time, that creates stability and helps you grow. So we're going to go through this quickly because I want to be cognizant of your time, and I don't want to push this much past the 7 o'clock hour. Although, like, we're small but mighty on the live version, and you can watch this in your own time as in the recorded version. But closing thoughts: society programs us towards immediate gratification and going with the flow. This is driven by all the marketing campaigns that want to get money out of your pocket for their product or service before someone else gets to those dollars. Everything in society is wired to convince you to spend money here and there, or spend money here and not there, or on this and not that. And so that you got to fight against that immediate gratification mindset. You got to have that tunnel vision around some well-defined goals to be able to tune out that noise and make good use of your resources. So, that is important to kind of fight against what society tells you. Back up to the first point, and this may be a future collaborative webinar. I'm challenged to read the book, and I'm going to be getting into the book Who Not How, that talks about thinking about who can help you along the journey, not necessarily how to do it. If you're spending all this time thinking about how to do something, you're really not best using your gifts, when you should be thinking, hey, who can get me to where I want to go faster? And so, if that's of interest to you, I think that that's a really highly regarded book to help you kind of organize and prioritize your life and build your team. Know your own limitations as well. We all only have 24 hours in a day, 7 days in a week. It's not possible for every person to do everything they need to do with excellence. So pick the areas that you will dedicate your time for life advancement and do that diligently, but then work to find and hire out those other areas and build your dream team. This is going to allow you a better return over life, and spend, while you're spending more money, you're also ultimately benefiting more from your enhanced productivity and your higher life fulfillment. So, hire a mechanic, lawn care, house cleaning, financial services, taxes, general contracting. Know your limitations. So, ending it with this: next steps and action items. So the first part is your next steps. Go in and rate your confidence in the multiple areas of life. I'm going to send you a list of what those things are. Could be, hey, how good do I feel about our budget, our protection of our gaps in our finances, our investment strategy, our debt management plan, goal planning, etc. Rate them. Have your spouse rate them separately. Come together and get like a collective rating, and that should help inform where you have opportunities. Have you defined what your financial goals really are? Do you have that budget established? These are all things to process through. And then take it and identify one move or habit that you will begin working on to take that next step in your journey to get the most out of life that you would want. So focus on that one key action. I always tell clients that the whole seems overwhelming, but that next step is your most important step. And where do I and StillWater, my company, fit in? Well, we are a financial advisory business, so we offer relationship-centered financial advice in Charlotte. I'm in my mid-30s. I am the owner of the company. I specifically love supporting those accumulator families that are in those building years of their life. I have a bunch of different solutions that I can plug people into depending on what's the right fit for them based on their stage of life and their budget. And talking about it with me and just knowing me what I offer as an option free of charge. I just want you to have good, reliable information. I'm not trying to grow fast. I'm trying to grow right in my business. So I only want to bring on clients that are the right fit for what I offer, but I want to leave everybody better than I found them. And one thing that I do think makes my mode of this unique, because there are a lot of financial advisors and professionals out there, a lot of ways you can go. But I'm, like I said, relationship centered. So I want to know you. I want to know your family and serve you in a meaningful way. But I also care about the community and the impact in the community. So I have a vision of banding my business together and my clients to improve their lives by lowering costs over time when we hit certain milestones, or rolling out additional value-added services free of charge. And then I want to eventually give some portion of the company profits and give that back to the nonprofit community. So if that energizes you or there's more to discuss there, certainly let me know. We ran out of time for questions. I did not see anything come in, and from the Q&A, and so I will leave you with this. If you need to reach me, I would love to be a resource for you or others that you know that I might be able to help. Again, don't charge anything for those exploratory conversations. And my hope here is to establish myself as a trusted source for financial advice and support in the community, and then ultimately, hopefully, raise the bar on the standard for client-centric, affordable advice for the financial services industry, especially for the younger portion of our population that tends to be oftentimes neglected by the financial industry with smaller investment balances. So I hope this has been helpful. I will remain here if you do have questions that you want to type up, or if you need a minute to use the QR codes or write down any of that information. And again, I will send out the webinar material in the days ahead so that you have it to reflect on or share with others. But with that, thank you for your time. I hope this has been helpful. I hope you have a great evening, and God bless. Hope to see you next time.